So, we're still here about the Hit Reg thing. Post after post after post.
One eternity later.
And 99% of them are all the same thing. Fix the Hit Reg. Netcode bad. Didn't have this problem on previous titles. Oh, my little dude, how so wrong you are there. Yep, a lot of people screaming netcode and hit reg, and most of them don't seem to understand some of these things, like technology, global population, cross-platform handshakes, hell, even physics. So, I guess we get to talk about it again and see if we can get some people to understand some things. It's not an easy fix, and it's something that's here to stay. So, let's get into it and find out why. I've had a lot of folks give me a hard time for reloading my weapons, even if I only fire off one round. I do this for three very specific reasons. One, I don't purposely go for headshots, not normally. I don't have caffeine-loaded fingers for mouse and keyboard. I'm sure if I wanted to unlearn 4 decades of habit, I might be able to pull off most of my shots as headshots, but right now, nah, I'm good. Second, and speaking of habits, it's an old habit from so many other shooter games I've played, which leads me to the third reason. Hit Reg. I go for bigger mags simply due to Hit Reg. I play on PC, so with a direct connection to my router, I have minimized on my end a ton of potential hit reg issues. Plus, it's an upper mid to lower upper range PC. I'm sorry, I just don't have $5,000 to $10,000 to get an extremely high-end PC. Plus, I never considered those prices worth something that becomes obsolete after a few years, even if I could upgrade it. But that's a different conversation. We're talking hit reg today. Hit registration is the server's process of validating your engagement. If you see hit impact but the NPC or opposite player doesn't lose health, the server has rejected your hit. Now, I've covered this before, but it seems the message is not getting through, so I guess we'll take another stab at it. So hopefully we can get at least some people to transform from scrubs to hood rats. Most players think it's a straight line from them to the NPC or the opposing player, a sort of line-of-sight truth, if you will. You see a target right in front of you and you engage, right? Well, yes and no. See, in a perfect world, if your crosshair is on an enemy and you click, they take damage. In an online environment, there are 3 players involved in every shot. The client, that's you. Your game calculates where you are and where you're aiming. The server, the source of the real truth. It tracks every player's position and decides if a bullet actually hits. And then the victim. Their game is also reporting their position. Your game is reporting yours, your opponent is reporting theirs. Now, I try very hard to minimize hit reg. Direct connection? Check. Big magazines? Check. Full big mags and one in the chamber? Check, check. And for the most part, I make certain allowances and adjustments to minimize as much potential for hit reg issues as I possibly can. So I don't have a lot of bad experiences with this issue. But what if you're playing on console, which is where the biggest complaints of hit registration is at? Well, why you guys feel it more? Well, while the engine is the same, console players face unique technical hurdles that exacerbate this no hit reg issue. Now, for example, you got network hardware instability. You console players are statistically more likely to use Wi-Fi than PC players. I don't know why, but unless it's something out of pocket, out of your control situation, you know, college dorms, maybe you live in an apartment, I can understand that. I'm not talking to you guys. Well, I'm talking about the mofos that purposely work on Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is prone to jitter and packet bursts. Even a microsecond of data loss can cause your client and the server to disagree on exactly where an enemy was when you pulled the trigger. And you have input latency and frame rates. I mean, Battlefield 6 utilizes a hybrid subtick system. This system relies on high-frequency updates. If a PC is running at 144 hertz and a console is capped at 60, or even struggling to maintain that during heavy chaos, explosions, and buildings collapsing, the PC player is sending more frequent status updates to the server than the console player, and that results in a tighter synchronization. Aim assist also has an issue of desyncing. On consoles, aim assist slowdown can sometimes track a target's client-side position, even if the server's version of that player is slightly behind. That's the desync. And the aim assist is literally pulling your reticle towards a ghost that the server no longer recognizes as a hit zone. Now, if you've got crossplay on, there's a three-way negotiation here. Hit registration exists because in an online game, there is no single truth. Your console sees the enemy in one spot. The enemy's PC sees themselves somewhere else. The server is the referee trying to decide who is right. When you pull the trigger, your console sends a "I shot here" packet to the server. But because the signal takes time to travel, that's your latency, people, the server has to rewind its clock to see where the enemy was when you fired. If the server's math doesn't match your console's visuals, the hit is rejected. This is a fundamental reason hit registration issues exist. The server is the only one whose opinion matters here, and it's constantly correcting everyone's homework. Sorry, I hate to break this to you. The hardware is what's telling the truth, no matter what your eyeballs see. Now, why does it affect console players more than PC? Well, this is a technical tax. While PC players often have the brute force of high-end hardware and direct lines, console players are fighting against the physical limitations of their machines. See, I can upgrade my PC. I can get better RAM, I can get bigger RAM, I can get a faster motherboard, I can get a faster processor. You're stuck with what you have in your PlayStation 5. Now, unless you are an uber nerd, don't care about violating the return policy, you can upgrade your console, but only so much, and most people won't do it. They either don't want to sit there and waste the money, or they don't have the technical know-how. Then you have the CPU bottleneck. This is your simulation versus reality problem. Even the modern consoles use mid-tier Zen 2 CPUs. In a game as complex as Battlefield 6, the CPU has to handle 64-player physics, destruction, ballistics, and all the other bullshit. And the problem is, if the console CPU is struggling, that's your bottlenecking, it can't update the game world fast enough. So the result, your console might miss the exact millisecond you pulled the trigger because it was busy calculating a nearby explosion. This is why console players report ghost bullets. The hardware literally couldn't process the fire command in time to send it to the server. You also have a simulation rate misalignment. The Battlefield 6 server runs on 60 Hz tick rate. that's updating 60 times in a second. Now, on PC, players often run 120 frames per second or higher. Their machine is talking to the server more frequently than the server even requires. But on console, you're capped at 60 frames per second, or 120 frames per second in performance mode. If your frame rate dips to 55 frames per second during an engagement, your console is now slower than the server. You are providing the server with outdated information, which leads the server to reject your shots because your truth is lagging behind the server's truth. For your PCs, high-end PC motherboards use dedicated Intel or really baller network chips designed for high throughput and low jitter. Console mix? They're integrated, and they're budget-friendly chips. They are prone to buffer bloat. This is where the cards get overwhelmed by the massive amount of data 64 players generate in any given session. This causes micro-stutter in the data stream. Even if your internet is 1 gigabyte per second, a cheap NIC can cause packet bunching, making the server receive your shots in one big confusing lump rather than a clean stream. So basically, in layman's terms, you got input lag. This is your wait time between thumb and screen. Now, you got your console and TV combinations, you get high delay. With PC, you get low delay. Your view is always older than a PC's player's. Always. Then you have your desync, when you and the server are reading different pages of the book. Console CPUs stutter more, causing you to fall out of sync with the server's master clock. Let's not forget VSync. This is the handshake between your console and TV to prevent screen tearing. This handshake adds a tiny bit of delay to every frame. Most PC players turn this off for raw speed. Now, for both platforms, regardless of the platform, Battlefield 6 Hit Reg failures usually boil down to 3 technical phenomena. You got your server rollback. This favors the shooter. Most modern first-person shooter games use lag compensation. When you shoot, the server rolls back its clock to see where the enemy was at the exact millisecond you fired. But the conflict here is, if you have 20 milliseconds of ping and the enemy has 100 milliseconds of ping, the server has to reconcile 2 different timelines. If the grace period for this rollback is too short, your hits get discarded. Then we have what's called dusting and hitbox detachment. Guys, in Battlefield 6, high-velocity projectiles, like your tank shells or snipers, can suffer from what's called dusting. This happens when a player or vehicle moves across a latency threshold. And the result is the visual model moves, but the physics hitbox, that's the invisible box that actually takes the damage, lags slightly behind. If you hit the person, but you miss the box. Then we have what's called a culling logic. So, okay, kill trades. Kill trades is where 2 players kill each other at the exact same time. And to prevent the Western shootout, DICE often implements what they call damage culling. Basically, on your screen, you fire the winning shot. However, the server has already received a packet from the enemy saying they killed you 10 milliseconds earlier. The server declares you dead and culls, which basically deletes, any bullets you fired in that final window. So, some things you got to take into consideration. Client hits. This is how many times you think you hit them. Server hits. How many times the server agreed. Packet loss. Data disappearing between your house and the server. If your client hits are significantly higher than your server hits, you are experiencing a no-reg issue. But guess what? There's a way you could diagnose this shit. If you want to see exactly what's happening here, Battlefield 6 has a built-in network graph. Okay, so from the main menu, go to Settings. Navigate to the gear icon under the Settings tab. Navigate to System. Scroll down to the Systems tab. Find Network. Look for the Network or Network Graph section and toggle the settings. Now, you have some choices here. Network Performance Bar. Set this to Always. This shows your basic ping and packet loss. I would do this for the start for a while so you can get used to where you can start learning to see where things are being reported. Maybe after a while, when you start recognizing when it happens, you could change it to Show on Problems. And your network performance graph. Same steps as with the bar. Set this to Always or Show as on Problems. Once enabled, a graph will appear, usually in the top right or top left. To understand hit registration specifically, look for these three metrics. Client hit, which is every time your game thinks you hit. If this line spikes but nothing happens, your PC or console is doing its job, but the server isn't listening. Then look for the server hit. This is the hits the server confirmed. If there is a gap between client hit and server hit, you're experiencing a no registration. Then look at the time nudge. This blue line shows how much the game is interpolating to smooth out lag. If the TN is high, which is, I would say, above 20 milliseconds, you're shooting at ghosts of where the player used to be in relationship to the server's reported time from that player's information. If you are on PlayStation or Xbox, also check out the performance overlay under graphics. You should see this under advanced. Now, if your sim rate, your simulation, drops below 60, the game's internal logic is running slower than the server's. This causes a massive disconnect where you might clearly see your bullets hitting a target, but because your sim is lagging, the server disregards the data as out of sync. But Hannibal, my Hit Reg was not like this in previous titles. You're right, my dudes. The history of Battlefield's netcode is essentially a decades-long arm race between DICE's ambitious destruction engines and the limitations of home internet. Each era had a specific flavor of hit registration failure. And let's not forget the secret sauce of different people having different internet setups to add as well. So, let's see if we can shut down some of these ass clowns, shall we?
Need a medic!
Did everyone forget the 10 Hertz Dark Ages with Bad Company in Battlefield 3?
I knew you had my back.
In these titles, the server updated at a staggering 10 Hertz. 10 times per second. You would frequently die 2 to 3 meters behind a solid concrete wall because the server only checked in every 100 milliseconds. A player could round a corner, kill you, and move on before the server could even tell you that where they were. To make the game feel smooth, despite the low tick rate, DICE used heavy interpolation. This made movement look fluid, but your actual hitbox was often dragging behind your character model like a lumpy ball and chain. Then came Battlefield 4, the Great Fix era. Yeesh. Remember, kiddos, Battlefield 4 launched in an utterly broken state and full stop, objectively worse than Battlefield 6's current issues by an astronomical unit. It was the turning point for the franchise's networking. See, for those of you not in the know, Battlefield 4's launch suffered from instant death, which was receiving all damage in a single frame, and massive desync. For those of you in the know, you should be ashamed for forgetting about it and calling the current hit reg and netcode of Battlefield 6 the worst thing ever. Anyway, DICE introduced a high-frequency bubble as a fix. This allowed the area immediately around the player to update at 30 Hz, 60 Hz, or even 120 Hz, while the rest of the map stayed lower to save bandwidth. So in comparison, Battlefield 4 eventually became the gold standard for netcode. But if you feel Battlefield 6 is off, even after doing your own troubleshooting to eliminate the things on your end, it's likely because Battlefield 6's Subtick system is trying to be more precise than the old Battlefield 4's 60Hz system, but it's failing to sync the animation correctly. And this leads us to the server side of things. The server-side era. This is for you Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5 fans. With Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5, DICE moved towards strict server-side hit detection to combat cheaters and high-ping players. This is where DICE introduced Battlefield 1's Lead Your Shot rule. If your ping was over 130 milliseconds, the game disabled client-side hit detection. You actually had to lead your shots, even at close range, because the server required your bullets to hit where the enemy was on its clock, not yours. And for shits and giggles, Battlefield 5 super bullets? See, Battlefield 5 suffered from toughness issues where the server could bundle several hits into one packet. You'd feel like you got one-shotted by a Sten gun from 50 meters away because the server sent the your hit message all at once. So unlike Battlefield 3, where the servers were just slow, or Battlefield 4, where the code was just utterly broken, Battlefield 6's issue is often subtick misalignment. See, in older games, the server checked your position on the beat, the tick. In Battlefield 6, it tries to calculate what happened between those beats. If the server's math results in a different millisecond than your console or PC's math, the shot is rejected. This is why you often see hit damage indicator but get no hit marker results. Now, what some of you really came here for. DICE can actually tweak hit registration without you even downloading a patch. And they do this through server-side hotfixes. We have variable refresh rates. They could globally increase the tick rate or the high-frequency bubble size from the back end. They also have lag compensation windows. Basically, if too many people are dusting, which is hitting with no damage, they could widen the server's rollback window overnight to be more forgiving to players. And they have attachment fixes. Now, specifically in Battlefield 6, a late 2025 hotfix proved that certain suppressor and ammo type combinations were actually desyncing the bullet physics. They fixed this overnight by adjusting the projectile data on the server. Now, if you're tired of waiting for patches, these are the three things to provide the most immediate, quote-unquote, overnight improvement on how the game feels. Now, this one will work with both console and PC. In Battlefield 6, if your console PC is struggling to maintain its frame rate, your simulation rate, that's the game's internal clock, it'll drop. If you're on PC or on console with a performance mode, cap your frame rate to a level you could solidly maintain. If you fluctuate between 120 frames per second and 90 frames per second, the server gets confused. A steady 60 Hz is better for hit registration than a shaky 120 Hz. Then disable future framing rendering. Now, that's specific for PC. If you have this on, your game is predicting frames to make things look smoother, but it adds 1 to 2 frames of input latency. In a subtick system like Battlefield 6, that's the difference between a headshot and a no-reg. Turn it off for the most raw, responsive hit detection. Lastly, let's make sure we deal with DNS and buffer bloat. Most people focus on ping, but jitter is the real hit reg killer. Switch your console or PC DNS to Cloudflare, 1.1.1.1.1 or Google 8.8.8.8. Then check your QoS settings. Go into your router settings and enable quality of service, prioritizing your gaming device. This prevents a no-reg from happening just because someone else in your house started a 4K Netflix stream. It's bandwidth, people. It's eating up bandwidth. Now, as a side note for context, the most recent update that was earlier in February, this addressed a massive issue with the movement extrapolation and made enemies appear jittery. If you haven't played since mid-February, this overnight fix for you is simply downloading the latest update, as it smoothed out the enemy hitboxes significantly. So a lot of the jitter disappeared. But Hannibal, why can't they just release a game with the bestest netcode and we can all avoid this terrible and hurtful hit reg? Jesus Christ. Do you need everything spelled out for you? Battlefield is a big game. Big as in globally. With hundreds of thousands of players on the game every single day and oftentimes hitting near or at 1 million during the weekends. The short answer is that perfect netcode isn't a coding problem, it's a physics problem. Specifically, it's a battle against the speed of light. Now, that sounds a little overdramatic, but walk with me here. Information cannot travel faster than the speed of light. Even with fiber optics, data takes time to travel from your console to the server and back. If you have a 50 millisecond ping, you are seeing the game 50 milliseconds in the past. If you shoot at an enemy's head, you are shooting at where they were 50 milliseconds ago. If the developer creates perfect code that only registers when the server sees right now, you would miss every single shot because the enemy had already moved. And to fix this, developers use lag compensation, which intentionally rewinds the server's clock to match your lag. But this creates the dying behind cover problem. You can have accurate shooting or accurate cover, but you literally cannot have both. Now, multiply all that shit times 32, 64, or hell, 128 if you're still playing 2042. You cannot fight that math. Not at that scale. Don't believe me? Go to Gauntlet with your current network graph and your bar running. Record your sessions. Run them 5 or 6 times. Then repeat the process in Conquest or Escalation and compare those numbers. Shit, run it as maxed out as your PC can go. Run it again with the troubleshoot I provided earlier. Then compare those numbers. And then come back to me and tell me I'm wrong. I guarantee you 99% of anybody who's watching who is doubting what I say will not do that homework. Because they know I'm right. It's literally the Battlefield complexity tax. Most shooters like Counter-Strike or Valorant are played on small, static maps with 10-ish players. Battlefield 6 is trying to sync 32, 64, or 128 players all moving at once. You have a ton of variables in the math equation. Projectile ballistics. Every bullet is a physical object with drop and travel time, unlike hit scan games where the bullets hit instantly. You have destruction. If a building collapses, the server has to tell 32, 64, or 128 people exactly where every brick landed so they can use it for cover or flee from so your character doesn't get crushed. The sheer amount of data, that's your bandwidth, required to keep all players synced on a falling building while tracking 1,000 bullets per second is immense. When the server gets overwhelmed by data, it starts dropping packets, leading to the no regs you see. And the 2026 issue, the hybrid subtick system? In Battlefield 6, DICE introduced the subtick system, which is similar to Counter-Strike 2. In theory, this tracks actions between the server's heartbeats, as I stated before. If your PC console has a micro stutter, even just 2 to 3 frames, your subtick timestamp becomes slightly different than the server's, and results with the server seeing your shot and saying, this shot happened at 10.005 seconds, but at 10.005 seconds, that player you were shooting at had already gone behind a wall, Rejected. Rejected! Well, Hannibal, that's nice, but why not build a new engine? DICE does update the Frostbite engine constantly. However, building a new netcode from scratch often introduces more bugs than it fixes. Remember Battlefield 4? Remember Battlefield 2042? This is exactly what they tried to do, and look how that turned out. Developers usually prefer to iterate on a known system because they understand its flaws. Think of it like a highway. You could build a 20-lane highway. That'll be your high tick rate. But if people are driving cars with flat tires, that's your bad Wi-Fi and jitter, there will still be traffic jams. DICE doesn't control the cars, that's the players on the internet, so they have to write code that tries to guess where those cars are going, which is where the errors happen. Oh, so you're saying this is all our fault? You're full of shit. No, Scrubs, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is most of the kids out there think they understand shit when a lot of the times, well, they don't. When I see the usual suspects with the Hit Reg pitchfork in one hand and the Netcode torch in the other, those are the ones that have zero idea what they're bitching about. And when I explain shit like this and they see it, they immediately resort to the childish response of, oh, so we're to blame, not an evil corporation. Yeah, right. Well, I'll say it again. Run those tests. Come back when you think you could prove me wrong. Your one-man army against physics is going to be hysterically funny for me to watch. So basically, folks, if you're going to play large-scale, huge multiplayer games like Battlefield on a global scale, you will always have a hit reg issue. To minimize it, you got to look at your gear and your home network. Just turning on your PC or console is never going to be enough. You got to check your router. Maybe set up channels to make sure someone in your home isn't sucking up your bandwidth. Internet speeds play a role too, guys. A lot of players have between 500 megabytes per second broadband or the 1 gigabyte fiber and think they're safe, but their router is choking on the number packets, not the size of them. And oh, for fuck's sake, if you're purposely playing on Wi-Fi, man, you really shouldn't be playing online games, like, at all. What is the matter with you? So hopefully, this helped understand Hit Reg a little bit better. Not just for this game, but in any game with high-intensity action with a shit ton of players. It's not fancy, and it's not some kind of magic wand-waving thing that could just be fixed permanently. But you can minimize it to improve your experiences. Okay, so that about wraps things up for the time being. I'm sure the talk about Hit Reg will never stop, but at least this and my previous video about it is here. Now, for those of you who are new here, before we let you go, I spotlight veteran support groups each month. I provide a brief description of each and provide a link. Said rundown and link is at the bottom of the video description for you to find. Check it out and see if it's something you're interested in supporting. And that's a wrap for midweek, folks. So until the next one, out.